you don't push the recording button yet, because that would be
Oh,
terrible to go live now.
no, we're not live. You could just talk all the shit you want, man.
Okay, so yeah, let me tell you about Tex. And, I mean, just... Oh, wait, you pushed the button already!
No, go keep going about text. I want
You're
to hear
already
your
recording.
thoughts.
You're already recording. I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't talking about Tex at all.
So yeah, hello, people of the future. What's the future like, guys? Did we
We have
make it?
flying cars yet?
Yeah, I think we're beating that bit down like a dead
We
horse.
really are. It's
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah.
But hey, yeah, this is a double header. This is a make good episode. So if you're watching this right now, today's Thursday. You're going to be watching this on a Sunday, the following Sunday, and this is just as a make good episode because the YouTube overlords deemed it fit to strike down my show, in which I was doing the alligator watch along, which I was really looking forward to. Because it is a legitimately entertaining movie, and there would have been so much fun banter, and I had everyone there.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's not how the winds blew that night. So, thankfully, and much love goes out to Greg Ogles. He was very gracious enough to let us preview some the early half of his new film, Land Between the Lakes. Guys, go check it out. Relic Films, I believe. .com.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, but yeah, go check out Greg's shit. And I'm going to try to get him on, especially because we missed all the clips from the movie where the blondes showed up. So I wanted to get him and the blondes on here, and hopefully we can do that episode eventually.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
But yeah, as a make good, tonight is a bonus episode. Last night I would have been live. I will have been live. Future perfect tense.
Yeah, yeah. You would have been live.
No, there's two modal verbs in there. You can't.
But this is a temporal thing, right? Because we're in the past, but people are watching this in the future.
Yeah.
So the people of the future.
Oh, but this is our present. This is our present. Okay.
Right. So people would have seen your lot. You will have seen you going. Would have seen you going live. Or it's something like that. Yeah, there's again, it's that what was it? It's a Big Bang bit.
Yeah.
About yeah, you will have no. The people of the future would have seen you when you go live in the future. Yeah, I hate.
Oh no, mechanics. The people who are watching this currently as it premieres hopefully would have seen the previous night.
Yes. So they would have seen you live, and you should.
Oh, we're talking deep grammar to a bunch of Americans. They're not going to get it.
Well, it's more than that's temporal.
Leave it to Americans to butcher the English language, English grammar.
Yeah.
Leave it to good old boy Americans. Speaking of Americans, Jason McLean.
Yes.
I've been following the news as you have been.
Yes.
And
there have been some. To.
Yeah, someone's got to. Because the other people in our group ain't, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's been some revelations that have come out that have, I'll be honest, infuriated the shit out of me. And I think you also know what I'm talking about. It's recently been revealed through the efforts of the new Trump administration that USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, right?
Yep.
They've been fucking up. They've been fucking up big time. And they've been taking all this taxpayer money and just pissing it all away. Taking a dump on all the U.S. taxpayers with all these frivolous programs. A lot of them have nothing to do with the benefit of the American people. And some have been outright contradictory to some basic American values. Which is all fine and dandy for me, right? Like, because I don't normally get too emotionally invested in either side. Like, I don't consider myself pro-left or pro-right. I like to consider myself on neither team because I follow the philosophy of Bruce Lee, Jason McLean. And what does Bruce Lee say? Be like water.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how I approach this whole political shit. But there's a line that to be drawn, and that's when you start fucking with my video games.
That's fair.
And once it turned out that USAID was dumping all of this money into all the woke DEI bullshit, it's been coming out that a lot of this push for this progressive bullshit. And again, I'm not anti-progressive in general, but once you start putting, do you hate progress, Jason?
So the thing about progress is, no one ever asks, well, what are we progressing towards?
Well, warp drives, duh.
That would be
warp
progress.
drives.
That would be progress. The problem is, when people call themselves progressives, and they're like, well, this is for progress, they never tell you what they're progressing towards. And the problem is that
that's what Star Trek is for, Jason. That's why Star Trek came out and became part of our zeitgeist, so we know what we're progressing to.
Well, so this is where I want to get back to your point.
Mm-hmm.
That would be, but my point would be, the quote unquote progressives are not going towards Starfleet. They're heading towards the Borg. That's what we're progressing towards.
Oh no, you know what they're heading to? They're heading to the Aliens universe, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation.
Yeah.
That's a dark version of Star Trek.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, where where humanity's run, or we could go even darker and go Warhammer 40K, but that's too nerdy even for us.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
I'll be honest. I don't know if the Warhammer's all that bad, but I get it. So get back to your point. Money's being dumped in, and the progressives are destroying your video games.
They're fucking up my video games. They're putting all this unnecessary gay shit, all this woke trans bullshit, all this race swapping, and this cultural Marxism.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not pro-white or nothing. Look at me. Yeah. But I'm just saying, when you're destroying...
According to progressives, though, you are white adjacent.
I am white adjacent, yes.
Yes, because you can read, and you believe in objective reality. Therefore...
I also speak with proper grammar.
You speak with proper grammar. Therefore, you are now white adjacent.
And I also don't speak like a Californian.
Which is better for everyone.
I lived in California for about 6 months, and let me tell you, the way the people talk over there is fucking annoying.
Is
because everything is and then every sentence it ends up like it's a yes or no question, and we don't know how to speak our own fucking language because we're too fucking stupid. And I'm like, are you asking me a question or are you making a statement?
Vocal fry, I hate that. I
fucking hate that shit.
It's one of the few things that I agree with. Who's the guy who created Family Guy?
Seth MacFarlane.
It's one of the few things I agree with Seth MacFarlane on. I hate the vocal fry. It is easily one of the things I hate the most about anything else. It's like, don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna do anything about it, but I hate it. I hate hearing it. I hate everything about it.
If you say every other word, English better not be your native language, because if it is, you're fucking retarded. There, I said it on the internet. Oh man. Man, good thing I'm not monetized.
We don't want to be demonetized. I can't even do it properly. It's so bad. It's so awful, and I hear it. I blame TikTok. Which brings
we don't
want
to be demonetized?
Yeah. But are you even monetized? Well, see, the problem is that's even a question. I asked a question, which is why I could do it.
No, you got to make a statement like that. You can't even do it.
I know.
See, I can do it because I live there.
I know. That's just, I blame TikTok. Which brings us back to our point about this all being cultural Marxism. That's really what this is. And let me push back on one thing.
All right.
I would suggest that USAID money, it would have been a better use if it had been spent frivolously. That would have actually been a better use. The problem is USAID is not an aid foundation. Again, that's why it's called. People think it's USAID. It's not. It's USAID. Again, the Agency for International Development.
Right.
It's called USAID so that people think it's USAID. And because aid, the aid part of it, is the fig leaf. It's the thing that you dangle, it's a teeny tiny thing you dangle in front of the massive corruption that it is. Mm-hmm. Now, this is why and I know people who are in like the legitimate healthcare field, and they talk about this a lot. In that there are good things USAID does. That's not up for debate. Yes, there are absolutely good things that are done. The problem is it's a fraction of the money spent. And even the money spent doing good things, a lot of that's siphoned off to other people. So, before we get into I don't want to get into the nuances of USAID and how it works, because that's not anything I would be hypocritical trying to pretend to do that, because I could only regurgitate what Mike Benz has been talking about for years now. He came out of the State Department. Donnie's got a link to his X feed. I finally stopped saying Twitter randomly. To his X feed, and he's been on several episodes of Joe Rogan. Go listen to him, because he will explain the nuances of USAID. One of the things that he said. So I'm only going to comment on the parts that I actually have something myself, because in many ways this is stuff that we've been talking about for a while. Mm-hmm. But for the nuances of USAID, go listen to Mike Benz, go read his work. He's done this for years. He's the expert. But one thing he said, and he says a lot, and I'll go ahead and repeat it, because again, this is Mike Benz's point. If it's too dirty for the CIA, they call USAID. What we need to understand about what USAID is, it is essentially a money laundering, it is the money laundering arm of the CIA to do things that are so awful and so, in many cases, against our own interest, that it would be illegal for the CIA to do. Like I said, people say, but what about the good things they do? I'm not saying that USAID does not deliver food to people or medical stuff to people. Yeah, 100% it does.
Yeah.
But that's a fraction of its total spending.
Can you give us some examples of some of these programs? The
good programs?
The bad ones.
So, again, I will let him get into the nuances, but I'm going to tell you what it does. Some things that that's been revealed over the last 2 weeks that everyone should find really terrifying, and actually gets into your video games. So, one of the things USAID has been funding is a lot of these news agencies overseas. Or money will go to these NGOs that focus on disinformation, right?
Yeah.
So what's literally happening is our money is being spent overseas and going to NGOs where that money is then spent here to go after free speech and to go after advertisers, very specifically. Like Steven Crowder's name popped up several times. What they have been doing is pressuring advertisers to put pressure on like YouTube, Rumble, X, formerly Twitter,
Facebook,
or Meta specifically, and Google Ad Spaces, and all of those things to not in order to demonetize or push off people like Alex Jones, and then which was everyone, and he was really the test bed for all of this. Again, whether you like him or not is irrelevant. He was the test bed. Then they went after people like Steven Crowder, and Sargon of Akkad, and many, many other people.
Didn't they go after Tim Pool?
Tim Pool, right. They went after, not really Fox, but yes, they went after Fox as well. And they also went after, again, anything that is conservative, or even not even conservative, Joe Rogan, it doesn't even have to be conservative, just not left.
Right.
That's all it had to be. Is that if you weren't supportive of the leftist storyline, if you didn't bow to what they were telling you to say, USAID money was being used to pressure advertisers to pull advertising dollars from these shows and pressure channels to get rid of these shows and to demonetize the shows and downrank the shows. Shadow banning, this is where this came from, was USAID. And when they were going after anyone who didn't support the mainstream view. Now, where this affects the video games, we see a lot of programs that that sort of again, this is just even the front-facing stuff for USAID, right? Was programs about supporting the transgender community. And so a lot of these programs a lot of this money was sent to NGOs that would then turn around and say, hey, video game producers, we want these kinds of games, and we'll give you money to support this. And we've actually talked about this. This has not been revealed yet, and I don't know if it ever can be. And this is going to tie into a larger part of what we're going to talk about here in a second. But remember when, I think it was on this show, we talked about how people talk about BlackRock and Vanguard and all that, right?
Yeah. Those venture capitalists, yeah.
Yeah. 13 point, and above trillion dollars in assets. And one of the things I said, and we've talked about this a lot, that is not all their money. Meaning that the assets that they are playing with are not necessarily, everyone's like, well, it's mutual funds and investors, and that's what they're... No, it's not. I would submit a lot of that money is actually our money that the United States government is giving to these individuals and to these groups to move markets. That this is... I don't know that it's USAID because of the numbers involved. We're going to talk about, again, we'll talk about that more here in a second. But that it's the same idea, right? Where money is funneled to like an NGO or another group like Vanguard and says, okay, this is what we want you to do with it. We want you to create pressure to have transgender children's sections in Target. Right, and what Vanguard and others would do is they'll walk up and they'll say, "Hey, Target, if you do these DEI stuff, we'll give you better loans. You'll get these bonuses, and you won't have to pay back this percentage of the loan, or we'll be able to give you this kind of an interest rate on our loans to you to support you." Because more important to these really large businesses, it's actually like Budweiser and others. It's actually the investor money is more important than actual sales, to a point, but it is. So that's another example. Again, it's not USAID directly, not that we know of, but essentially it's the same thing, right?
But it's USAID, like Sweet Baby Inc.
Exactly. Sweet Baby Inc. is funded by China, right? So China's like, here, we're going to funnel money to Sweet Baby Inc. Sweet Baby Inc. is out there pushing your woke agenda and ruining these video games because it's a psychological operation. It is about corrupting a philosophy. It's about indoctrination, not education and not entertainment. And that's what they're trying to do. And so the USAID is the same thing. Essentially, if something's too dirty for the CIA to do, this is Mike Benz's point, USAID does it. Now, a lot of people have said, but it's such a small fraction of our budget, and that's true. I had to write all this down because I can't keep these numbers in my head. In 2023, which is the only thing we really have good numbers for, USAID had spent $71.9 billion, and which is larger than our than what we spend on intelligence, because again, that's the thing that we use to move needles, right? For the intelligence operations, we spent, and this is estimated for 2024 as far as our budget, $6.75 trillion that year. So, yeah, the 71.9 billion, kind of a fraction. Like, it is literally a drop in the bucket of what we're spending, right?
Yeah.
So the thing about USAID is it's not the final boss of this. It's the key that unlocks the final boss. Because this is what you have to understand. This is what we've been talking about on this channel and my other channels, Questions Everything, when we talk about who they are. And I talked about it's the people outside the government. Like, everyone's trying to point out the government, or it's the Jews. It's like, no. It's these multi-trillion-dollar companies and the people in them. But this is the other point. There is a class of people who make their living off of the government. These are these think tanks, right, where people keep moving back and forth, and they're in these corporations like Halliburton, right? Those are the people in charge. They're moving the money around. But here's, and this is why I brought up the whole Vanguard BlackRock thing. The simple fact of the matter is, it's our money that's being used to destroy our country. Great example of this. Again, this is USAID money. We talk about Soros-backed DAs, who are the people who show up and say, hey, like in California, right? The whole, we're not going to prosecute you if you steal less than $1,000 worth of goods.
Oh, right? Yeah, and then basically all the major change just packed up and left the major cities and downtown areas and communities.
Because they couldn't keep up. That's why they had to lock up deodorant, right? Like everything's under glass because people were just walking in. Remember those videos where the kids were just taking these bags and they were just going on the bike, fill up the bag and leave, and no one was bothering to stop them because it wasn't worth it. They weren't going to be arrested. They weren't going to be prosecuted because it was less than $950 per kid. But you have a dozen kids come in. It's clearly organized. Doesn't matter. Like, we can't do anything about it. So that's all of that is started with these Soros-backed DAs in all of these major cities, and the assumption that's been with Soros, because it is clearly his money, or it's his foundation, was that it was his money. Soros is a billionaire. Dude has tens of billions of dollars, probably hundreds of billions of dollars in assets. This guy does move needles in whole economies, right? What we find out is USAID was funneling money to his organization, which means it's not even his money that he's been playing with. This goes back to our conversation about, the broader conversation about like Five Eyes and Epstein, right? And Ghislaine Maxwell, her father was this business magnate, but he specialized in these newspapers, and essentially the newspaper was a front for the Five Eyes, right? We talked about this on your show. It's essentially, what this means is it's the same thing. It's not his money that's being played with. It's our money that he's playing with to undermine our freedom of speech and our government.
Right. We're paying for our own demise, essentially, is what it is.
Correct. And this is where, once you understand how that money's being spent, this next sentence will be terrifying. So something came out just a couple days ago. Doge found, hold on, make certain, because I don't want the number to be too small. I don't want to undersell this. $4.7 trillion is missing. Now let me be really, because someone's going to say, well, it's not really missing. No. I'm going to explain what we mean by missing. They were auditing the money that went out, and they wanted to see what was it spent, who did it go to, and what was it spent on. They couldn't confirm that. The codes were missing. Now, a little behind the scenes of me and Donald here, we both are in the insurance realms. I'm in a very different field. It's title insurance. Very, very different. I mean, the fact that it's technically insurance, just not exactly, but we both work in this
I work
world.
in auto insurance, yep.
So, Donnie, let me ask you this question. If you were sending money out and you couldn't say who it went to and why and why that money was spent, so you can't say who it's being paid to or why, how long would you keep your job?
I'll be out there with the quickness. With the quickness,
in fact, would there be potential of you going to jail for fraud?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be escorted out by the police and into a squad car in handcuffs.
In my industry, I literally have, again, closings for houses, stuff like that. I have to account for every single cent. And every year we have to pass an audit by the Texas Department of Insurance. And if we can't show not just who the money went to, but why, if I can't prove that that money needed to go to that other company or to that person for divorce or whatever, or for those taxes, if I can't prove why I sent it and I can't justify it beyond the shadow of a doubt, where it's reasonable for me to send that money to that place, I will have my license revoked. And again, if it happens often enough and or it's flagrant enough, I'm going to jail.
Right.
The United States government wants to audit any transaction above $600 for us. If I do something that's $600 plus, they want to know who it's going to and why.
Mm-hmm.
This is $4.7 trillion, and we can't account for it.
Yeah.
So let me ask this. Seeing what's just been going on with USAID, is it reasonable to assume that perhaps this $4.7 trillion that we can't account for is going towards the thing I said earlier, that the 13 plus trillion dollars that Vanguard has, the 10 something trillion that BlackRock has 13 last I checked, Vanguard is almost 10 trillion, that those assets, that a nice large percentage of those assets may have come from us. This is not just corruption. Don't get me wrong. This is hugely corrupt. Okay? It's entirely possible that our budget could be balanced if we just got rid of waste and fraud. So corruption is a huge percent. I'm not underscoring how much corruption this is, because this is corruption, right? Mm-hmm. Of the highest order. But a large percentage of this money, I guarantee you, it's not just USAID. A lot of this money is going to change who and what we are to make us better global citizens. This is about engineering us into this one world government. And this is where he gets crazy with the end time stuff. No, this is just looking around. This is the people who've been advocating for a one world government are the people getting this money. And when you have this much money and you can't prove who it went to or why, you have to ask the question, yeah, a lot of that's corruption, but how much of that money is actually doing the USAID kind of stuff, but we don't even know it? It's not just going to somebody's yacht or somebody's super yacht. This is going to manipulate the algorithms. Again, what is the thing I've been saying? Hold on. There. What's the thing I've been saying for years now? This is what MK Ultra turned into. Your phone. All the algorithms on it. And this turns into video games. Even the chat that you see on, if you go to TikTok or Instagram, right? And you look at the comment section, that even the comments that you see are engineered for you. Period. It's not just corruption. Corruption is a massive slice of this pie. Yes, what's far more disturbing is that this money, your money, actually, it's worse than that. It's not even your money, because we are, hold on, at last count, $36.2 trillion in debt.
Yep.
By the way, the GDP of our entire nation is only $29 trillion. It's not our money they're playing with. It's our great-great-grandchildren's money.
Right.
That's being played with. And what it's done, it's being used to do two things. One, it's being used to change us without our permission, to manipulate everything you see and hear. Mike Benz has famously said, when you understand who and what USAID is doing, again, this is just USAID, you'll understand that every terrorist that's blown something up, every person you think is our friend, it's all wrong. Again, this is not to say Hamas is not a bad... Anyone who defends Hamas is a moron. But we funded them. Please understand what I'm saying. ISIS. Remember when ISIS was going through and in Syria and just taking Christians and burning them alive or cutting or sawing children in half? We funded that. We funded all of it. It's not a it's a Taliban thing where we funded them in the past and they turned on us. No. That's not what that is. We were funding them Hamas trying to kill people. Now, we were funding ISIS when they were sawing children in half. We were funding them during that. That's where your money's been going. And that's just the stuff we can see. That's not the $4.7 trillion that we don't. And just to put that $4.7 trillion into perspective, the U.S. spent $6.75 trillion in 2024. So 4.7 trillion of that 6.75 trillion is completely unaccounted for. We make in revenue $4.92 trillion a year. That's what the government gets in. That means if we got rid of the stuff that we just can't justify, we'd have a surplus of over $2 trillion. We can't justify where this money's going. And yeah, a lot of it's just corruption, right? And to a point, that's actually better than the stuff we don't know about. Because some of this stuff is going to fund.
This is beyond corruption. This is more like a concerted effort to completely undermine from within.
It is. We are paying for our own destruction. And what it's done is it's made all of us wage slaves. Our money isn't worth anything at all. Now, you may argue, well, it's better than a lot of other currencies. Yeah, but you forget our money used to be worth 10 times what some of these other currencies were. Now it's almost on par. And that's insane. And our money is going to fund things we wouldn't support. It's going to undermine things we wouldn't support. It's going to undermine us. And literally make, in many cases, the world a worse place. For example, I don't want to get too in the weeds about the whole Ukraine-Russian war, but Zelensky himself said that of the $175 billion that were pledged, he only got $75 billion of it. So where's the rest of the money? Now, a lot of people have pointed out that the money, it's like it wasn't really money, although it was money because we were funding them, like straight up, like their social services, their trash guys. We were literally giving them cash for that. But that was, again, small segment of that pie. A lot of people are, well, it's more about the weapons we sent over and all that. True, right? But where's the rest of it? That's almost $100 billion. That's at least $100 billion, again, that supposedly went to this war that was so important. And yet, he's like, we don't have it. And for all the people who are like, oh, Israel runs the world, they have too much influence. We spent more in 2 years on Ukraine than we ever have on Israel. So, be more mad about this. And Ukraine, by the way, the last 5 years, over the last 8, really actually 8 years, has had more interference in our politics than anyone else ever. So, again, that's its own show unto itself. If you're mad about anything, you need to be mad about this. Because this is them. This is the deep state, the blob, whatever you want to call it, directly changing us. They're trying to foment our own Maoist revolution. This is a color revolution. You notice how you have all these protests that pop up and everyone's got signs and everyone's organized. The rent-a-mobs that are showing up and burning down our cities over the last 8 years, that's where this is coming from. It's not just USAID. It is this $4.7 trillion that they can't account for. They are literally paying these people to burn down our cities and foment racism and foment violence and murder people, while our own government turns around and comes after the law-abiding citizens. You want to burn down a Planned Pregnancy Center, which is just there to help pregnant women who maybe don't have any money, maybe they get kicked out of their house or whatever, and they're there providing resources for them. Burn that down. FBI doesn't have a friggin' clue. Mm-hmm. Go to Latin Mass, they're up your ass with a kaleidoscope. Are you protesting and talking about the fact that your daughter got raped in school? Great. The FBI will descend with dozens of agents and arrest your ass. But you throw a Molotov cocktail at cops during one of these rent-a-mob riots? Heck, they won't even not if they do arrest you, you'll get compensated for being arrested. This is not just corruption. Corruption would be fine. This is
this is more than corruption.
Yeah, this is.
Let me show you a couple of photos, Jason.
Go for it.
Tell me what you think.
Yep.
This is more than corruption. No.
Yeah.
This shit.
Yep.
And again, nothing against trans people. I even befriended a few while I was living in Korea. Nothing against them. All for if they want to live that life and be who they want to be, they deserve the same rights and dignity and opportunities towards happiness as everyone else. However, with little kids talking about just sexuality in general, imagine if you had a straight person reading a story to a bunch of kids like this, a story about straight relationships and straight sex and being straight sexual.
Yeah.
And heterosexual pride. People would be like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. You know who wants to talk to children about sex? That other people's children about sex? Groomers, pedophiles. Period. This is what we're talking about. This is not. And here's the thing. This has nothing to do with trans people. This has everything to do with indoctrination. It's about destroying the psyche of these kids because. And people have known this for a very, very, very long time. Psychologists have known this for decades. The easiest way to destroy a child is to expose them to sex before they're ready.
Right.
Not just through abuse, but just showing them. This is why there's so much money funding the free porn industry. I didn't even hear about this until recently. It's like, I was always wondering, why do we have all these free
porn is
sites?
free?
There are free porn sites, yes.
I didn't know about this.
Well, you being the upstanding moral
this is
person
news
that
to
we
me.
know. I mean, you're the Pope of the Church of Dogman.
Yeah.
You would never engage in such things.
There's free porn out there on the internet?
Right. Yeah, I mean, back in the day you had to pay for it, right? Like a good degenerate. Now it's free. Why do you think all of these free porn sites freaked out when Texas and other states said, you have to at least be able to verify your age? Why did they do that? Why did they shut down the entire state of Texas? Right now, if you live in the state of Texas, you can't access any of these free porn sites. And all they said was, we just want you to provide proof of identity, not even identity, just your age, that you're over 21. Actually, I think it may even be 18. Why did they instead of just saying, okay, yeah, well, here's a protocol for it. Yeah, no, they didn't. They just shut everyone out. Why? Because they know it's going to kids, and the reason it's being supported, again, I will put money on this, that a lot of the money that's going to support these free porn sites is coming from our own government, because they know that if you get these kids exposed to porn young, you screw up their heads. In fact, I was listening to one psychologist talk about this, and they said, here's the thing. We can't even measure the damage done by porn to children because we can't find anyone who hasn't been exposed to porn. Imagine you were you were in the medical field 100 years ago in Virginia, and you were like, well, we want to see the damage of sending these kids into the mines. Actually, let's make it easier. Let's say you lived 100 years ago and you wanted to prove that smoking was damaging to kids' lungs, but you couldn't find anyone over the age of 12 that wasn't a regular smoker. That's what we're talking about. You wonder why these kids are all anxious, all hopped up on drugs. You wonder why they can't focus. You wonder why they know that's what this will do to you. They know the damage this does to the brain. I guarantee you the money's going towards it. It's not just one thing. It's everything.
Let's talk about video games real quick.
Yep.
Sweet Baby Inc. They're putting all this woke, crappy shit in video games. Race swapping, throwing this transgender LGBTQ agenda in there.
Yeah.
By the way, do you see this black female character?
Yes, I do.
Do you know what game she's from?
No, I do not.
God of War. God of War. Are you
Okay.
you're familiar with the original God of War. It takes place in
it's,
ancient
it's,
Greece,
it's
right?
Greek. Yeah, it's about. It's
And
supposed to be
then the
about
new
Greece,
ones,
and then, yeah,
right? That's the PS2, PS3 era. And then once you go to PS4, PS5, God of War moves on because Kratos already killed all the Greek gods.
Yeah, he killed all
them all.
all the
He
Greek
fucking
gods. Yeah.
destroyed them all.
Yeah,
So then he
moved on to,
retires.
yeah.
And then he goes to Midgard and Norse mythology. And this is the newest character in God of War 2, that the last God of War game that came out. Angerboda, if that's how it's pronounced. You know who she is? She's the love interest of Loki. Notice something funny about her?
She's not Norse.
This is Sweet Baby Inc.'s first major contribution to the video game narrative. This is when people were like, hey, because prior to this, nobody had any inkling of any woke shit in video games. Like Red Dead Redemption had woke shit, but Red Dead Redemption actually did it right.
Right.
But when they just did this, a character in a game about Norse mythology, and then when people complained, all the game developers and all the shills for the game were just like, oh, you're racist, you're a bigot. You have something against black people. And then everyone else is like, no, we just think it's kind of weird because this is Norse mythology.
Yeah.
Like, if you saw a character like this in Braveheart, you'd be like, what the fuck? Goes back to our whole Cleopatra being black thing.
Yeah.
Right? And the people who pointed it out, this was like the first manifestation of all the woke controversy in gaming. Right? Brought about by Sweet Baby Inc., by this piece of shit. Well, recently, some insiders in these video game development companies reached out anonymously to some of these people that I follow, and they actually spilled the beans on what Sweet Baby Inc. actually does. So, because people for the longest time knew them as storyline consultants, narrative consultants, how to make a game appeal more towards a modern audience.
Right.
Right.
That's always the claim, right?
Yeah, and then so everyone blamed them for putting all the pronouns in Concord, and even though they didn't, I don't think they worked directly with Concord, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
They made like all this gay storylines in the Spider-Man games and all that.
Yeah.
But well, it turns out that the insiders, when they came out and they said, no, that's not what Sweet Baby Inc. does. What they actually do is, you know how all this money from USAID is going towards like all these venture capitalists who are pushing all this DEI, ESG, and they're using that as a checklist for funding.
Yeah.
Right. And when you mentioned earlier how a lot of companies nowadays are more reliant on that than actual sales and profits.
Right.
Sweet Baby Inc.'s actual job, was to connect these video game companies directly to these venture capitalists.
That were funded by USAID.
They were the actual point of contacts. So they would go directly to like BlackRock or Vanguard and be like, What do we have to check off in order to get this funding for this video game? BlackRock would come back, give them the list of what they expect. Sweet Baby Inc.'s job is to make sure these video game companies or these developers all comply with their demands to get that funding. So the hope of a lot of these game companies and these game developers is we'll bow down to their demands, we'll acquiesce to their demands for us to pander, and hopefully we'll make a good enough game where we get the funding from these venture capitalists and we get profits.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it hasn't been working.
Go woke, go broke. But that's exactly what you're describing is what we said earlier, right? About where Vanguard and BlackRock were, they had a list where it's like, if you do the DEI stuff, if you have a trans section where children can tuck their genitals, right? And it's right next to them, and and you teach the kids about, like, then you'll get these favorable, again, DI hookups, and that's what to your point, it's what Sweet Baby Inc. was doing. Again, this is not random. This is a psychological operation, and it is destructive. If you don't know,
it's very concerted.
If you don't know what the Maoist struggle sessions are, please look them up. Everyone points to like the Bolshevik Revolution, and part of that's what's going on. But really, this is more of a Maoist. What's happening here is far more reminiscent of the Maoist revolution in China. That is far more emblematic of what we're seeing today and what's happening today in this country. And it is not from an outside source. It's from our own government. Our money is being used to fund our own color revolution in here. Because what the ultimate goal is, it's trite, but it's true. They want you in the pod eating the bugs. They want you to be a controlled civilization that again, they want peace, but peace means they control it, and the they is this group. Again, it's not just one group of people. It's groups of people who are trying to have a controlled society. And if there's one thing that we've learned is, again, the great sort of conspiracy theory is it's not one controlled group or one group that controls everything and everyone does what they're told. Essentially what we're seeing is it's a lot of little mafia groups. That's what we're seeing. Yeah. And the only thing they had in common was just make certain the American people didn't find out what's going on. So it's a lot of conflicting interests, and it's like having a bunch of mobs living in one city, and of course they'll fight with one another, but the big goal is don't destroy the host, and just make certain the people don't know that you're there, right? Like the vampires from the original Blade movie, right? Where it's like they control all this stuff, and they control the media, they control the cops, they control all this stuff, so they can feed. And as long as and again, the vampires were fighting amongst themselves half the time. As long as the regular people didn't realize they were real, then they could just do whatever they want. That's what we're seeing. That's what all this is. Our media was captured and paid for, right? We're seeing that they were funneling
news
money
media,
yeah.
Think of all the funding that went into just making the media all spin one yarn, one narrative. Yep. Think of all the funding that went into like trying to take down Trump. That's a whole other bag of worms.
That's its own show.
Yeah.
And I think this is what's really important is when you realize. Yeah, one of my favorite memes now is people are like, "Well, you realize that Republicans were probably involved in all this too." Yeah, we know. We want to know who it was. That's why a lot of these people have been leaving for a while now.
Mitch McConnell just announced that he's stepping down.
Yep, he's not running. He's not running again. He wants it because and here's the thing: they may have just run out of batteries for him. But the simple fact of the matter is, there were a lot of Republican turnovers over the last 8 years. Because that brand of Republicanism went away. And I've said this for years now. The Republican Party, at least for my entire life, everyone's like, oh, it's only been the last 20 years. No, it hasn't. My entire lifetime, that includes Reagan, the Republican Party was largely just a heat sink.
Yeah.
It was a place for, it's not that it's not that Republicans couldn't get certain things done on the margins that they agreed with, because again, conflicting ideologies, right? As long as they allowed the deep state to move in its direction and to do what it wanted to do, which again, deep state isn't just one thing, it's a lot of different groups. As long as that was allowed to happen and general ideas were adhered to, then they didn't care what you did on the margins, because they got what they wanted the entire time. And the Republican Party was a heat sink. It was a place for people who would push back on a globalist agenda. It was a place where you could go and you thought you were voting for people who were trying to fight for you and weren't. Like, again, they do stuff on the margins, but they could never actually stop the government from getting bigger. Right? They made certain funding went to where it was. And again, there's a reason why Mitch McConnell is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It's not just the Democrats, it's all of them. Freedom.
I bet you Mitch McConnell and like Nancy Pelosi are all buddies backstage.
Oh, they all are.
Yeah.
In fact, that was something people talked about. They said, "Oh, I want to go back to the '80s when they'd fight, but then after they'd go back and sit down and they'd have drinks after work." And I'm like, do you understand what you're saying? You're saying that everything they're saying up front is fake. This isn't about comedy, not comedy, politeness. This isn't an honest disagreement, but you fundamentally want the same thing. This means for decades, all of these people have essentially been actors.
It's pro wrestling.
It's pro wrestling. That's a great example. Yeah. That's all this has ever been. And for the first time in my lifetime, we're actually seeing somebody who's not who isn't scripted in.
Right.
And it's hilarious that he's got a connection to professional wrestling. And we're seeing we're seeing these professional wrestlers, these older guys like the
people often ask me like why do you like pro wrestling, Donnie? Because a lot of people think it's stupid. Right. And I'm like, dude, one of the reasons why I'm fascinated with pro wrestling is because it helps me understand politics better.
It does. No, you've said this for a while, and sir, you were very much on point. I think one of the reasons we've hooked up digitally in this realm, people, keep your mind clean, is you've made comments like that, and the fact that people give these people too much credit. You're very astute in this. Let me tear down the facade for a moment on this.
Let me break kayfabe.
Yeah, let's break some kayfabe here. Donnie has some very, very astute observations about politics, and I'm more political than I am anything else. But he's got some very, very astute observations, and probably honestly, you're pointing out that the American political structure is very much like professional wrestling. I think it's probably one of the best observations you've ever had.
Well, I'm a fan of two things. I'm a fan of history and I'm a fan of pro wrestling. Both those things lend to a deep fundamental understanding of how I may not know all the details or all the names or all the positions or whatever, but you kind of see it for what it is.
And again, the thing is, it's easy to get lost in details.
Yeah.
Like that, we need to. This is the thing we need.
Well, that's how media works. They throw so many details at you that they cause you to get lost.
Right.
They throw up a maze. Yeah. Yep. They'll throw up these beach ball talking points. Mm-hmm. They'll be like, "Oh, they're getting too close to the truth." Abortions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point, we need both people. There are people who need to be specialists and understand the details of certain things and send them on that. And you need the people who can put all of it into perspective. Like I said, Mike Benz, hold on. Sorry about that. Thank you. So much Texas weather this week has been nuts. We were literally on this last Saturday, we were like 70 something degrees. And then we were in the teens a couple nights ago. Like, it's nuts. But like Mike Benz, go listen to him. He's going to give you the details of USAID. And what all of that is, I'm not going to steal his thunder because I'm not in that. I've never once mentioned the word USAID. It would be it'd be hypocritical of me to say, oh, I know this about you. I don't. And everything I know is coming from like basically Mike Benz. But which is why I focus on the part that I already have been talking about, which is how the money's being used, right? And what it means to us. In many ways, all of this, right? Essentially, we've now seen how fake our politics have been over the last 40 years. And you could argue it goes back to Kennedy. They killed Kennedy. They got Nixon kicked out. That's its own episode. And they attempted to kill Reagan. They missed, but he got the message, and it's very clear he got the message because while yes he went after the Russians and he wanted to, and there were a lot of good things that he did. There was also other things that he was doing that like was affecting like USAID. USAID, what it is now, is very much tied into Reagan. So this is much more complicated than people realize. But the big picture here is the Republican Party's largely been a heat sink for people who would oppose the ultimate goal, which is a one world government where there's an upper class and there's everyone else.
For people who may be unfamiliar with the history of USAID, it was originally started by JFK as a response to the growing influence of communism throughout the world. So he realized that America really needed to build up their soft power because he didn't want another Vietnam from happening. So he came up with USAID. He established that through an executive order to basically spread soft power and try to combat. Yeah, it was like the soft power branch of U.S. intelligence and U.S. foreign policy.
And let me say something that's going to.
That's why Hollywood's so tied into with all that shit too.
It is. No, it really is. Like, please understand. It's not just the ticket sales. No, USAID money has gone to that. And again, probably since $4.7 trillion has been going towards that. I am not opposed to using soft power. In fact, let me throw something out there that everyone's talking about, like $20 million for an Iraqi Sesame Street. Like, no, that's a brilliant idea. How do you keep people from blowing themselves up 20 years from now, or even 15 years from now? Show the 3-year-old and teach them that life can be good, that you can be prosperous. Teach them to read, teach them to count, show them doctors, show them engineers. Now, again, I'm not saying that particular section of the world, again, this is its own conversation, right? I'm not saying that we can turn them into a Western society in the next 10, 15 years. I'm not saying that. But you can turn enemies into, if not allies, at least not enemies. Not belligerent. Using soft power in that way is superior to using hard power. 100% agree with that. Here's the problem. That's not what we're doing. We are literally using soft power to create terrorists.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not what it's doing now. USAID, since JFK's vision of what it was supposed to be, has since been way hijacked, right? Way, way, way hijacked. But that was its original purpose and goal and why it was started.
Well, and so let me take one step further here, right? Remember at the end of the original Ghostbusters, right? Zool shows up, not Zool. Which one's Gozer, the Gozerian?
Gozer?
Which one was Gozer was the chick, right?
Yeah.
And
which one was Zool? I think Zool was one of the Keymaster.
Yeah, Zool was there is no. I think so. There is no Dana, only Zool.
Okay.
And then which one was which one was
Gozer.
The destroyer? Gozer, yeah. And so the final form of Gozer, right, was chosen by the people, right? They're like, well, it's like, well, clear your mind. Like, no, I thought the one thing that couldn't possibly hurt us, and it's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, right?
Right.
And this giant Marshmallow Man is just walking around destroying New York City. In many ways, that's what USAID, and then by extension, what's happened, now I will say this, over the last 20 years, this is where, and maybe probably 30 years, we probably push this back to Clinton, but there's a reason why we are now, hold on, $36.2 trillion in debt, right? USAID in many ways is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Kennedy's like, all right, I'll create something that couldn't possibly hurt us, and in fact, it's going to be a good thing. And then it turns into this one, and then over the next few decades, it starts turning into the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, where it's actually working against us. It's working against freedom. It's working against the American people. It's about destroying our currency. It's about destroying our society. It's about breaking up families. It's about creating conflict in this Maoist revolution that we're going through. And that's really what it feels like this is. It's this manifestation.
It's this shit.
It's that.
Yeah.
It is about corrupting the youth. And you've even said this, like you're not a Christian, but you've talked about how it seems weird that so many objectively demonic imagery keeps popping up and being shown and promoted.
Oh, you mean what I like to call satanic bullshit?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. It's like
there's been a lot of satanic bullshit being thrown around. Like everything's getting more satanic and more gay.
Yep. And it's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
It just isn't. We can talk about the spiritual, factor of this later, but the simple fact of the matter is none of this is a coincidence. We talked about this. The Fat Electrician did a video on this, but we've talked about it on the show, how modern art was basically promoted by the CIA, right? And we talked about that, how the money was going to essentially NGOs and really rich people, and then so the money was laundered to promote this stuff that nobody liked, and now everyone liked it, right? Because they were told to like it. That's the music industry. That's Hollywood. This is not a coincidence. It's a very concerted, as you pointed, it's a concerted effort to create this world that is clearly demonically inspired, that is designed to destroy the United States and Western values, and is designed to create this this very Maoist revolution. Before anything else, I would like to put because we're talking about trillions of dollars. It's hard to wrap your brain around that, right? So let me just throw some numbers out here that make sense. That it's something easier to understand. The United States government brings in, according to 2024, an estimated $4.92 trillion, or let's say $4,920,000 a year. Let's just knock 6 zeros off of that number, right? So let's say it brings in $4.92 million. We spend $6.75 million. So we're losing $2 million, basically almost $3 every year. Okay? We are $36 million in debt. Let's talk about healthy debt for a second. There used to be, again,
a trillion. You said million.
Yeah, right. I lopped off 6 zeros to make that easier to understand. So I had to lop off 6 zeros, and we're still talking about in the millions. It used to be that you had like 2.5. Like if you were to buy a house, right? They said, well, the house you could buy is like 2.5 times your yearly salary. That was considered a healthy debt. Okay. Essentially, that would mean our healthy debt would be a little over $12 trillion. That could be considered a healthy debt. We are over 3 times that amount. That's how in debt we are. We actually spend more servicing the debt than we do on our military. Everyone talks about military spending. Military spending is nothing compared to what we're actually spending on the debt, servicing the debt. That is just the interest for this $36 trillion. We are essentially wage slaves in this country. And yes, USAID it's the key that unlocks this whole thing. Because the money USAID was spending Again, I'm not saying it never did a good thing. What I'm saying is the good things they actually did were the fig leaf to hide the really terrible things that they were doing, including undermining our entire society. And this is a huge part of why we are $36 trillion in debt.
Yep. So, guys, I think before we leave you with those thoughts to stew on, I want you guys to remember just one thing. If you feel discouraged that there's all this shit out there, all this fucked upness, and you know what I like to say about these nefarious forces? There's an almost brilliance to it, right?
Yeah.
It's almost brilliantly nefarious.
Yeah.
But I think once they started throwing all the weird sexual shit like in kids' faces, I feel like people that's when they overplayed their hands, and people were just like, yeah, nah. So, with that final thought, I want you to think about hope. I want to leave them on a message of hope, Jason McLean.
Yes.
I'm playing the music. Here it comes. Guys, when you feel down, when you feel like the world is against you, and like everything's all built up, and there are these evil, nefarious forces that are running the world and that are actively out to destroy everything you value and hold dear, and you included, if you're ever feeling overwhelmed, just remember, there's always K-pop. K-pop is here to free us from all that satanic ass bullshit that infests our Western music, that infests the minds of our kids. You know, Jason, nowadays there's a growing number of American kids who've abandoned Western music because they are wise enough at their young age to see through all that satanic, overly sexualized bullshit. And these kids are coming towards and flocking to BTS. And more of them are getting all into K-pop. And I say that's a good thing, because K-pop is pure, Jason McLean.
It is pure.
You're wiped clean of all this woke bullshit.
Yes.
All this corruption. And then finally, after seeing all this bullshit, comes hope number 2, folks. Pro wrestling.
Yes.
Through the careful study of pro wrestling, you too can see the truth of what this society really is. At the end of the day, all government is and all politics is the eternal struggle between baby faces and heels. But none of us can ever agree on who is the true baby face or the true heel, because some of us are hardcore WWF fans and others are some like WCW fanboys. And others think like AEW's, their shit don't stink, but their shows actually have been sucking now. And there's some WWF fanboys. Some people hate Vince, some people love him. But Donald Trump showed us, and maybe that is the true lesson Donald Trump brings, is that he brings pro wrestling to politics. Because at the end of the day, that's all it is. Just some pro fucking wrestling.
He plays the game better.
Yeah. Pro wrestling and K-pop.
Okay, all kayfabe aside for 2 seconds.
All right, let me pause this.
No.
Right.
Keep it going. Keep it going.
Okay.
Keep it going. This is proven that this is not that we are not opposed by an unstoppable juggernaut of organized, brilliant men.
Mm-hmm.
It's evil, yeah. It is satanically inspired, true. But these are not the best and the brightest. These are just a bunch of corrupt people. Some people just are in it for the money, some are in it for the power, some believe wholeheartedly in this demonic one-world government, but they are not unstoppable. They are very stoppable. The only thing that actually gave them power was believing that we couldn't fight it. That's it. But we can. This is why for years I've said, you, the people watching this, not Donnie, but the people watching this matter. The powerful. Get involved. You're like, but I'm just one guy. I'm just a guy. Donnie's just a guy. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump's just a guy. These aren't monsters born from unfathomable magics. There are other people that are just demonically inspired. You fight them with prayer, and then just show. It's not just voting. Get involved in your local politics.
Mm-hmm.
Get involved. Straight up. You can make changes. You can fight them with the power of BTS.
The power of BTS. See, even Joe Biden is inspired.
Yes.
I think this was this was the only moment in his entire 4-year run in the White House where he was like truly happy. I think Joe Biden and very much was the victim in this story. I feel like.
Well,
part of me feels sorry for him
because he's a piece of crap. But that being said,
yeah,
he was, and perhaps you know what, the reason he dropped out was because the power.
Look
of
at
BTS.
how. Remember how happy he looked, how smiley he was when Trump was in the office with him.
Oh yeah,
and he was like acting like he was like this buddy he hasn't seen in ever. Mm-hmm. Anyway, okay, I guess with that we'll leave it here. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this show. This is. Bye.